I am Ilger. At today's discussion of American classics, let's take a look at Moby-Dick, a novel written by Herman Melville. Melville was born in New York City in 1819. At the age of 18, Melville went to sea on various ships and saw various parts of the world including the South Pacific that inspired him to write Typee and Omoo. However, his later works including Moby-Dick were more experimental and challenging, and were not well received by contemporary critics or readers. Melville then turned to writing poetry and short stories, and eventually stopped publishing altogether. He lived quietly with his family in New York City until his death on September 28, 1891. It was not until the 20th century that Melville's literary reputation began to be rehabilitated, and he is now considered one of the most important and influential American writers of the 19th century. Published in 1851, the story of a Moby-Dick is narrated by a sailor named Ishmael who decides to sign up for a whaling voyage on the Pequod, which is a whaling ship. This ship's captain is Ahab. He a brooding, one-legged man who is obsessed with hunting down and killing the giant white sperm whale Moby-Dick, because the whale had previously taken one of his legs. As the ship Pequod sets sail, Ishmael provides detailed descriptions of the ship and its crew. He also shares extensive information about the whaling industry and the different types of whales that the ship might encounter. As the voyage progresses, tensions rise among the crew members as Captain Ahab becomes increasingly obsessed with finding and killing Moby-Dick. He convinces the crew to join him in his quest, despite the fact that it puts their lives in danger. Throughout the novel, Melville employs a variety of literary techniques, including multiple narrators, digressions on a range of topics, and vivid descriptions of the natural world. One of the most striking occurs in chapter 23, The Lee Shore, as Ishmael describes the ocean's vastness and its power. There is, one knows not what sweet mystery about this sea, whose gently awful stirrings seem to speak of some hidden soul beneath, like those fabled undulations of the Ephesian sod over the buried evangelist St. John. And meet it is, that over these sea pastures, wide rolling watery prairies and potters' fields of all four continents, the waves should rise and fall, and ebb and flow unceasingly, for here, millions of mixed shades and shadows, drowned dreams, somnambulism, reveries, all that we call lives and souls, lie dreaming, still, tossing like clambers in their beds, the ever-rolling waves but made so by their restlessness. This passage captures the mysterious and mystical nature of the sea, with its hidden soul and sweet mystery that speak to the depths of the human experience. Ishmael's language is poetic and evocative, and he uses vivid metaphors and images to convey the ocean's immense size and power, as well as the dreamlike quality of life and death in the ocean. One of the best descriptions of the whale occurs in chapter 32, Cetology, where Ishmael describes the general physical characteristics of the sperm whale, of which Moby-Dick is one. He is of moderate size, averaging 16 feet in length, and specimens have been captured in the Pacific, between 80 and 90 feet. Of a retiring nature, he eludes both hunters and philosophers. Though no coward, he has never yet shown any part of him but his back, which rises in a long sharp ridge. Let him go. I know little more of him, nor does anybody else. There she blows, there she blows. A hump like a snow hill. It is Moby-Dick. Chapter 36. This famous cry of the lookout, as Ahab spots Moby-Dick for the first time, captures the excitement and danger of the hunt, as well as the crew's awe at the sight of the great whale. It was a black and hooded head, and hanging there in the midst of so intense a calm, it seemed the SPHNXs in the desert. Chapter 86. This description of Moby-Dick's head, as seen by Ahab and the crew during their pursuit, conveys the whale's mystery, otherness, and ominous presence. These descriptions highlight the power and majesty of the sperm whale, which Ishmael suggests is more than just an animal, but a deity-like figure that possesses a kind of immortality. This passage also conveys the monetary value and the danger associated with the hunt for the sperm whale. As the Pequod closes in on Moby-Dick, the tension mounts, and the crew members are forced to confront the futility of Ahab's obsession. In a climactic encounter, Ahab and Moby-Dick engage in a fierce battle that ultimately results in the destruction of the ship and the death of most of its crew. In the end, only Ishmael survives to tell the tale, clinging to a coffin that had been thrown into the water during the final battle. The novel ends with Ishmael reflecting on the meaning of the journey and the lessons that he has learned. Moby-Dick is a sweeping epic that tackles a range of challenging and complex themes and ideas, including obsession, revenge, the search for meaning, and the relationship between humanity and nature. Obsession. The novel explores the dangers of unchecked obsession through Captain Ahab, who becomes consumed with his quest for revenge against Moby-Dick. His obsession ultimately leads to the destruction of himself and his crew. Revenge. It raises questions about the morality and effectiveness of seeking revenge and suggests that it often leads to destruction and tragedy. The power of nature. It emphasizes the power and unpredictability of the natural world, particularly the ocean and the whales. Throughout the novel, Ishmael and the other characters grapple with questions of meaning and purpose in a chaotic and uncertain world. It also explores various philosophical and religious ideas in an attempt to make sense of the human experience. In addition, Melville employs a variety of literary techniques including symbolism, metaphor, and allusion. His use of language is often poetic and lyrical, and his descriptions of the ocean and the whales are particularly notable for their vividness and beauty. It makes the novel a rich and multifaceted work that rewards careful reading and study. Some memorable descriptions from the novel are as follows. In that sloping afternoon sunlight, the shadows that the three boats sent down beneath the surface must have been long enough and broad enough to shade half Xerxes' army. Chapter 64. The simile compares the shadows cast by the boats to those cast by Xerxes' army, emphasizing their size and scope, and highlighting the epic scale of the hunt. Ishmael repeats, meditation and water are wedded forever. Chapter 1. It means that water correlates with meditation because both are a healing form of solitary escape from the world. They play off one another with the same calming effect. Water may save a man's soul. It was the devious cruising Rachel that in her retracing search after her missing children, only found another orphan. Chapter 135. This final sentence of the novel is a poignant and powerful image that suggests the cyclical nature of life and the inevitable losses that come with it. The novel has inspired countless adaptations, including films, plays, and works of art. Here are a few notable ones. Moby-Dick, 1956. This classic adaptation of the novel was directed by John Huston, starred Gregory Peck. Moby-Dick, 1998. This made-for-TV movie starred Patrick Stewart. In the Heart of the Sea, 2015. Based on the true story that inspired Melville's novel, directed by Ron Howard, and starred Chris Hemsworth. The novel's beauty, power, and complexity, as well as its enduring impact on literature and culture, is reflected in the following reviews. A strange, wonderful, and frightening book, full of sublimity and cruelty, heroism and tragedy, a book that leaves an indelible impression upon the mind, and remains one of the great works of imaginative literature. Harold Bloom. Melville's masterpiece, often unfairly cast as difficult or obscure, is a work of great beauty and power, a celebration of the sea and of man's search for meaning in a chaotic and often hostile world. Michiko Kakutani. One of the strangest and most wonderful books in the world, a masterpiece of daring and skill that stands as one of the greatest achievements of American literature. A.O. Scott. Overall, Moby-Dick is a timeless masterpiece of American literature that continues to be studied and admired.